Welcome to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast, hosted by Renita Ray Davis, licensed clinical social worker, board-approved social work clinical supervisor, and facilitator of the Goddesses of Social Work supervision community. Join us as we travel through the social work journeys told by the Goddesses of Social Work community members, past and present, as they make their way toward clinical licensure.
Welcome back to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast, where we celebrate the heart, soul, and brilliance of social workers and advocates shaping our communities. Today's episode is part of our Remember Me series, honoring the work of the Central Alabama Aging Consortium and the incredible advocates dedicated to uplifting and protecting older adults and their caregivers. This episode is also leading us towards the Remember Me documentary screening and community gathering happening on November 1st. This event brings together caregivers, advocates, and community partners to amplify stories, share resources, and create space for connection and collective healing. I'm honored to be joined by Cheryl Craig, a long-term Care Ombudsman representative with CAAC, who has dedicated more than 24 years to serving residents in long-term care and assisted living facilities. From her early work as an admissions coordinator and social services designee to her current role advocating for the dignity, safety, and rights of residents, Cheryl's passion for protecting vulnerable populations and amplifying their voices shines through every part of her journey. Welcome to the podcast, Cheryl.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. Oh, I already love your energy. It's so calm and soothing. I love that. Before we dive in, Cheryl, I'm going to start a little light because we're going to be talking about some heavy topics today. And so when you think about your joy in your own life right now, what's one small thing that's been making you smile lately?
The fact that I still have my mother in my life and that we are in the same household together. So I still get to enjoy moments with her. And it's little things like that that bring me joy.
That is so beautiful. You know, I always honor the women who came before us, and your mama is one of those. And let's go ahead and dedicate this podcast episode to her. What is your mama's name?
Pinky.
I love it. Pinky Craig, come on
Yes,
through,
ma'am.
Pinky. She sounds like she's a little hot fire spitfire.
She is. But I love her to death. I love her to life. She is.
What's one of your favorite memories of your mama? Or even a quote or a piece of advice she gave you?
My favorite memory of my mother is we used to have to get dropped off at her job. She worked in long-term care, and watching her care for her patients, and she took care of them the way she took care of us. From the top of their head to the bottom of their feet, you could tell that it was coming from the heart. True compassion, understanding, caring. That's what I got from her. And I'm grateful for that. Even to this very day, if she can help someone, she's going to do it. No pushbacks.
That is so beautiful. All right, Miss Pinky. One of the things you just said, Cheryl, she took care of others the way she took care of us. There was two things that came up. One, those people she served were very blessed and fortunate to have her, if that's the way she was pouring into them. But second, recently I did a podcast episode. I'm thinking about someone said, you are taking so much good care of the kids. She was serving kids that your own kids aren't getting what they need. How do you think your mama was able to take really good care of the people she was serving and also take really good care of you?
I think, and this is just what I think. My mother grew up not knowing her mother until she was maybe about 35. So she never had that nurturing from a mother. My grandfather raised her, but she was still young when he passed away. So she knows what it feels like not to have someone caring for you. And she drew from that and began to pour back out into other people because knowing what it feels like, she never wanted anyone else to feel that way. So I think that's what it is. I really do. She's never said that, but that's what I gather from it.
I would love to talk to Miss Pinky Craig one day. I think that is so beautiful. And you know
Me
what you
too.
also said about her a little bit ago was it came from the heart. And I
Mhm.
think and we were kind of talking before we hit record, when we're doing the work from our heart, it's not a physical toll on you because then you're allowing yourself to be used as a vessel. And the heart, all it does is expand. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It doesn't feel very depleting. So when you're doing the work that you love from your heart, you have enough, more than enough to go around.
That's true. That's
Hmm.
true.
Yeah. And I also just want to speak to the fact how, with such reverence and beauty, you talked about the way my mama cared for us. It
Mhm.
feels like you really felt how much your mama cared for you.
I still do to this day.
Ah,
I
yeah.
have to remind her, I got it. I watched you do what you did for so long. So I mimic what I watched you do. And she just gets a little nervous sometimes, thinking that I might not understand but I have to remind her I learned from the best. So she's still there in my corner and my sister and brother, because there's three of us. So she's still there for us. She's always had our back, and she still does to this very day.
What a beautiful blessing. And what a beautiful legacy you are to her to
Mhm.
have been dropped off at her job in long term care and now to be working in long term care. And that does get us to our first question, but it might be a little different. When you were growing up, what kind of work or calling did you imagine for yourself? Did you always sense that you would be drawn to this type of work, or did this path kind of unfold a little bit unexpectedly?
I'll never forget when I was in high school in the 12th grade, and we had to write an essay about what we wanted to be. And I chose the path of a nurse because my mother, while she was working, she was in school to become a nurse. But life happens. So she never did complete that. So that's what lit the fire in me to become a nurse. But I never pursued that journey. So that's really what it was. I watched her, and my grandmother also worked in long term care as a social worker. So it was things like that. It was in my family, you know what I mean? My aunt was an administrator. So it was things like that. The strong women in my family that I looked up to, that's what that's the path they chose. And I saw how rewarding it was. So that was what made my mind up. I wrote my essay. I wanted to be a nurse.
You know what? I believe writing is so powerful. You speak it into existence as well. But I'm also just thinking about, wow, you are surrounded by some incredible women. Your grandmother was a social worker, your mother worked in long term care, your aunt did this work over here. It's
Mhm.
in your lineage, it's in your bloodline.
It is.
Yeah. You want to tell us a little bit since that high school essay, like what type of work have you done before you came to CAC?
Yes, I started out, my mother got me my first job in long-term care. I worked in dietary, and working in dietary under a great administrator. He's still a mentor to me to this day. He's retired now, but um, he helped me to grow. And I changed roles from dietary. I went to medical records. From medical records, I went to the role of being the receptionist. And as a receptionist, there was an opportunity for me to learn admissions. And I talked to him about that one day. I said, what made you choose me to give this opportunity to grow in the long-term care field? And he said, you were willing to learn. And I wanted to know everything about it. You know what I mean? I wanted to know, what's it like when they first come in? You know, what do they experience? How can I make a difference? Even from the smallest thing, is like if I want a cup of coffee and it's not first thing in the morning, I should be able to get a cup of coffee in the middle of the day. This is a home environment. So at home, if I want it, like now, if my mom comes out of the room and wants a cup of coffee, she can have a cup of coffee. So I took the initiative to learn everything that was presented to me. And there's nothing like a free education. And I really got a free education and I enjoyed every bit of it. So I just grew and grew and grew and grew.
You seem like you just really enjoy life.
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you really just enjoy life. I wrote down great mentor because I think it is so important that we have mentors in our life. And so I guess one, I want to acknowledge him if you want to say his name. But what did it mean for you to have a great mentor in your life?
It meant a lot to me. And I'll never forget, he asked me one time, his name is Mr. Bernard Turk. And he asked me, he said, it was evaluation time. And I was under the directive of someone else, the business office manager as the receptionist. And he asked me, he said, do you want her to do your annual review or do you want me to do your annual review? He said, sometimes people will tell you what they think you want to hear. And I told him I would prefer that you do it, because if there's an opportunity for me to grow and learn something different about myself that needs to change in order to make me a better person, I want somebody to be honest with me. There's always room for improvement. He's not the only mentor now, but he was the one that lit the fire in me from the very beginning.
I love that, Cheryl, because I think that I say this almost in every podcast, but I have the honor of supervising a community of social workers. And so basically, I'm their mentor, but it does come with an end goal of them getting their clinical licensure. But sometimes when they come into these relationships, supervisee, mentor relationships, people, some folks don't want you to tell them the truth. It's
Why?
that uncomfortable growing pain. But when you are a person who wants to be the best version of yourself, you are willing to allow somebody who's been around the block, who's maybe not done exactly the thing you've done, but knows at least the energy of the thing that you've done, and say, hey, have you considered this, that, or the other? And that is how we grow, and we don't stay stagnant and stuck in the same. Because you've done, when I read your bio, you've done so many different things, and even you saying that tonight, you did this, you did that, the other. Some people will just stay stuck because they don't want and get really good at that one thing, but stay stuck because they don't want to receive any feedback of, oh, have you considered you could do it this way? Because they take that as a personal attack or affront. You want to speak to that?
I agree with you on that. And the reason why I do is because I almost got in that position myself when I had grown as much as I could at the facility, the first facility that I was at. It was time for me to leave, but I didn't know how to leave. I had got my bachelor's in criminal justice. I knew it was time for me to leave, but there was another administrator that stepped in because Mr. Turk had moved up. He had gone to a corporate level, but he still mentored me so that I could stay on the right path. But he was training administrators, and the administrator that he had trained to come into that building is the one that actually had to do the pushing. And when he pushed me, he put me in a position, and I give the credit to God because I didn't know how to leave. And I told him that. It was him and the DON who had watched me grow up in long-term care and was good friends with my mother. She said, Cheryl, you took it better than I thought. I told them, I said, I knew it was time to leave. I didn't know how to leave. But the way I left, and this is the truth. I had a paycheck all the way up until he got my resume and placed it in the hand of another administrator at another facility. And that's when it was time for me to step it up and do the admissions and social services designee, which I had never done, but I had worked so closely with the social workers in the building that I was in under Mr. Turk that I had knowledge that I didn't even realize I had. And one of my good friends that was a social worker, he passed away, D. Lott. He told me, he said, you can't teach people how to care. And you care. And so that's why I moved over here. And Miss Oliver, my new administrator with a whole nother company, she poured into me as well. And this was a person that had done, like you just mentioned, she worked as a admissions coordinator / social. She had worked that role. So she knew that I would be a good fit for that role. And I never missed a check. Everything was all right. So the transition was well with my soul. And that's what I told him. I wasn't bitter. I hated the people that I had worked with for so long, but it was time for me to move. So that's how I moved.
And won't the universe, God, just push you? Like you but what I love about your story is you'll get pushed, but you're still gonna be taken well care of. Didn't even miss a paycheck.
I did not miss a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, it was nobody but God. I did not miss
Yes.
a paycheck.
Yes. Have you learned, because I've been pushed, and I know our audience, the people listening, some of them have been pushed, but from having been pushed a couple times out of agencies that knew it was time for you to leave out of, have you learned over the years now when it's instead of getting pushed, you're like, okay, I got you.
Yes,
I'm gonna
yes,
go ahead and take my bags myself. Have you learned that lesson, or you still feel like you still get pushed every now and again?
I learned that lesson
Mm.
when I left the second facility because the drive, if I had stayed where I was, I could have grown more. But the drive, because I was still driving from Montgomery to Selma, it became challenging, and it was during COVID. And after I left there, I took a job at a facility in Wetumpka. It was a pay cut, but it put me closer to home because my mother was aging. And it was at that time that I started going to therapy. And that's when I realized that what I was feeling was burnout. I didn't realize it. So when I realized it and identified it during my therapy session, when it was time for me to move from the facility in Wetumpka, God moved me back up to a higher pay grade, but it wasn't what I was used to. I had to do scheduling. But even in the position as a clinic scheduler, I touched so many elderly people's lives. Even if it meant me getting chastised for being on the phone with them too long, I told them I cannot rush them because do you realize how many people out of their day rush them to either walk up, speak up? Do you understand what I'm saying? So this is my opportunity when they said, baby, hold on a minute. I need to get something to write with. I said, take your time. There's nothing waiting on me to work. You don't have to rush. And it was to the point where people would come and I would have to come from the scheduling part of the facility up into the actual clinic because they wanted to meet the person that they had spoken to over the phone. So yes, When it was time for me to leave that facility and come somewhere else, it was time for me to work with in a different setting, but it was the same demographic of people that I worked with. And when it was time for me to leave that position, here come the ombudsman role. And I did not know that I qualified for that position. I knew I had the knowledge, but I thought I had to have the credentials that I did not have. At that time, I was back in school for social work at Troy, but life happened and I didn't finish it. So yes, I realized when I spend too much time in a place and it becomes uncomfortable for me, that's my cue to, okay, it's time for you to move somewhere else.
And it's so much easier when we choose to move versus getting pushed. But if we do get pushed, we're going to still be taken really good care of.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a
That was
witness.
such a beautiful story. And I'm just thank you for what you do for all the people you serve, whatever age they are. I'm just imagining you're like, baby, let me get a piece of paper. And you're like, take your time. And I'm like, I'm going to take, even right now, I took that as permission. We're going to take our time tonight.
Absolutely.
We are going to take our time. I love that. And so because I know you brought up the Spudsman,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to get into that, but because we're taking our time and I could just listen to you talk, you have such a calming voice. I want to ask you a question that wasn't on our original questions. Your mama
Mm-hmm.
she served long-term care facility for years. You've worked in long-term care facility. What do you think is the difference between when your mama was there and and now your time spending there? Has it evolved, or are there any changes or beliefs you had about it that have changed over time?
There have been a lot of changes.
Mm-hmm.
The For one thing, it's the staffing, and a lot of people are much younger that's going into becoming the CNAs and nursing, and not all of them, but some of them, it's a job, it's a paycheck, and we forget that we're taking care of people. And it's changed. And I went to a seminar, and it was years ago, and the speaker, she said that we were going to see a change, that the people that are going to be working in long-term care are not going to be like the people that worked in long-term care then. It's not going to be the compassion and taking time. Some of them do, but with the shortage of staffing, you didn't really see that back then. But it is so common now. And so it makes it hard for the caregiver, and it also makes it hard for the person that's receiving the care. So yes, it has been a big change, and they're trying to find ways around that, but nobody has really come up with a good solution where you can accommodate both your workers and the people that you're caring for. So that's what's needed.
And you said the social worker who passed away, and honor to him, but you said you can't teach people how to care.
He told me that.
Mm-hmm.
He did.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna move to my next
Okay.
question. You've worked in long-term care for over 24 years in so many different roles. We just talked about them. How did your journey lead you to becoming a long-term care ombudsman representative? And what inspired you to step into this particular work?
Actually, I applied for a job with Central Alabama Aging, and the job that I applied for was as a case worker. And for whatever reason, God said, no, hold on a minute. That's not what I want you to do. So I said, okay, God. And it had gotten real stressful at the job I was in as a clinic scheduler. I was scheduling for 4 doctors by myself, but I hung in there. I did the best I could every day. And finally, I got a call, and The person in HR said, well, I know you applied for this, but we have another position available. I said, you do? And when they mentioned that, I said, I'm not a social worker. She said, you don't have to be. I said, really? She said, no, you just have to have a bachelor's degree. I said, absolutely. I would love to become an ombudsman representative. I was already an advocate working in long-term care. In every role that I worked in, I advocated. But now I'm going to be certified to go in and advocate. Because when you're working in there, you have to look out for the facility and you have to look out for your client. But as the ombudsman, you're not attached to the facility. So you try to find that common ground. You're the mediator, but you're that advocate for that resident and making sure that they're being treated with dignity and respect and that their rights are not being violated in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So as I grew in long-term care, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. It really, really did bother me to have to move from that role, but it was time. God had worked for me somewhere else. And once I completed that assignment, this is my reward. I'm back in long-term care doing what I love doing, advocating.
And you didn't even have to be a social worker.
I didn't even have to, but I wanted it. I'm telling you, I was in class. My teachers used to, oh my goodness, writing those care plans and stuff, but they didn't know I had, that's what I was doing anyway. But hey.
And you know what? And I hope, because, obviously I'm biased. I
Mm-hmm.
hope that somehow you find your way back in the classroom because the profession needs you even higher and higher and higher levels, right? So I'm praying if that's something that you still desire, that somehow you find your way back into the classroom because we need you. But I think it's so interesting because you're like the second or third person that I've talked to at the CAAC. Nobody got the job they actually applied for.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like whoever is doing the hiring is like, I know you applied for this, but this
Right.
is where we really could use your strengths and your personality and you're like the third person
Mm-hmm.
at the CAAC that story has been told. And like, what is going on over there where they're putting you guys in the perfect
In the perfect
positions?
position. It's all aligning with God. That's the
Mm,
way I look at it. I don't know about
mm-hmm.
anybody else, but for me, that's what it is.
That is beautiful. And so, what does it mean to you? We're going to get into what exactly is an ombudsman in just a
Mhm.
second. But what did it mean to you to land that role, especially a role you weren't even looking for? Because I just want to encourage people just apply, even if you're just like I'm just going to do this thing right over here. Just go ahead and apply because the dream job might
Right.
be this HR person like playing chess or checkers and putting everybody in the positions that they're called to be in. So what did it mean for you to actually land that position, a position you didn't think you were qualified for, nor did you even apply for?
I was overwhelmed. I was very excited in disbelief, but I did a lot of praying and talking to God at that time because I said, okay, I hear you. This is what you want me to do. This is what I'll do. This is where you want me to go. This is where I'll go. I just couldn't believe it because I said, I'm going back to what I love doing, and that's being in the long term care field. I mean, it was just, I couldn't believe it. I really could not believe it. I was overwhelmed.
I love that. And I just love that story. I love when stories like that come out because I just am like, it wasn't even a position you applied for. I didn't realize that when we decided to do this interview, this was something that you were called to do and opened up for you because you were obedient. And I love that. And so now tell us, because I'm going to tell you, I did not know what an ombudsman was. It was early in my career but still for, most of my life, I didn't know what one was. And I'm so certain that a lot of people may not know or be familiar with what an ombudsman actually does. Can you share who you serve and why this role is so essential to residents and their families?
We serve the population of people that reside in long-term care facilities as well as assisted living facilities. And what we do is we go in, and we're not surveyors, but we go in and we do have to check the conditions of the facility. We do have to make sure that their appearance is clean, no food all over their clothes like they haven't been attended to. We make sure that if there's a water pitcher in front of them, there's water and ice in there. And if there is water and ice in a pitcher, that it's not sitting on the other side of the room because they can't reach it. If we go in and do a routine visit, Marianne and I, Marianne is the other ombudsman. There's two ombudsmen at Central Alabama. If we go in and say there's a family member and they want to know how to go about asking about, well, mom's clothes have been missing and I've tried talking, we direct them to the people that they need to talk to that should be advocating in the building, which is the social worker. That's their in-house advocate. And it's a lot of people that don't know who those people are in the facilities. And what I like to do is, if I'm talking to my residents, I want them to know that as well. Because when you think about me being an admissions coordinator, when you do an admission, the majority of the time you're not even talking to the resident during that admission meeting, but they're the one you're going to be taking care of. So they need to have the same information as the person that you're signing those papers with, because at the end of the day, I'm the one who's going to be getting this food, and I need to make sure that you know what I do and don't like. If I want my coffee all 3 meals, that's my preference. So somebody needs to have a conversation with me as well. So when we do in-services, that's what we try to educate them to as well, because a lot of times they don't know. So we are their advocate. If they voice a concern and they feel like it's not being addressed, then we can come in and request a care plan meeting, sit down with the resident and their family, and try to come up with a resolution that is satisfactory to the resident and is something that the facility can accommodate. And what I like to tell the people, the facility administrators, social workers, if it's something that you cannot do for them, don't tell them that you can do it. Be honest with them and explain to them why you cannot do it and offer them options. You know, 9 times out of 10, when you do that, that relieves the anxiety, the frustration, and it makes them feel more comfortable being in their home environment, because that's what it is. They don't choose to be there. Some people don't have a choice, but try to make them as comfortable as you can, and please be respectful of them. So that's what we do when we go in there. We try to build a rapport with those people in administration so that if there is a concern, that they're willing to sit down, talk it out, and listen to whatever recommendations we have to try to make life a little bit more comfortable for those people that they're caring for.
I love that. And I wrote down so many things, but I'll try to remember what I was. So first, I heard you say you represent long-term care. Well, you don't represent, but you're the mediator between long-term care facility and the patient. What I heard with that is not just seniors, but anybody who's in the
Anybody.
anybody, children, adolescents, young adult,
That's
whoever is in
right.
the long-term facility, you are the person that is that middleman for that person. The other thing, I just think I had a misconception, and again, I told you this is years ago.
Mm,
What my knowledge is about ombudsman, that if a family member feels like their loved one is not being treated well, and I always just thought about it as abuse or some type of neglect, that's when we reach out to the ombudsman. But what I think I just heard you say is they're just not paying attention. The water jug is way over here. They're not cleaning dad up, as you know, on a regular basis because he has food all over his pajamas or whatever. It's not just if they're being abused or neglected. It's we want them to feel as comfortable as possible because this is their home.
right. And they do reach out to us if they feel like, if a family member feels like their loved one is abused or neglected, we go in and we do an investigation. And based on what we find, we have to do a complaint. But based on what we find, of course, they have to give us permission first. You know, you always have to have consent. But based on our findings, then we can also do a referral to the Alabama Department of Public Health.
So, what would be an example? This other thing, example of why a family member would contact you. And what I remember, and I think I got this from Monica Barnes, the
Mm,
ombudsman number is somewhere in these long-term care facilities
and
and
our
should be
picture.
accessible to family members in and out, coming in and out of that facility, right?
Absolutely.
And so, then
There's,
what would be an example of why a family member would contact you or your partner?
well, if they have, even if they haven't spoken to, say for instance, you go in and you visit mom and you see her food tray sitting there and she has dementia and she doesn't know, her brain is not telling her to pick up her utensils to feed herself, or her food hasn't been uncovered and her juice hasn't been open for her. Those are things that they call us for as well. So we go in and we pay attention to that to see if this is actually happening, because you know you have to verify what you're being told. Not that you don't trust anybody, but seeing with your own eyes. We have gotten calls about that. Well, mom is supposed to be fed, but she's not being fed. They're just putting the tray in there. So when we go in, we want to see the care plan. What does her care plan say? Is she a feeder? Is she not a feeder? If she's a feeder, why is her tray just sitting there unopened? What is your policy? What do you do? Do you feed after you've passed all of your trays? That's part of the investigation. That's what we go in and we look for, because the care plan tells the CNA how to care for that person. Or if you go in and, well, I came in 3 days in a row and my mom's call light was not within reach. We go in and we ask questions. We check on all residents when we go in, because if it's happening to one, it may be happening to multiple. And we look to see if those call lights are within reach, because that's their way of communicating that, hey, I need help. So it's things like that that we get calls for. Or mom's bathroom floor is sticky and dirty. We go in and we look to see if housekeeping is going in there cleaning the bathroom, or if the clothes are missing. Let me see the inventory sheet to see if this has been listed on the inventory sheet. Have you sat down with the family member to try to come up with a resolution? What is your grievance policy? Have you done a grievance and tried to resolve it to the satisfaction of the resident or the family member? So we get calls on a variety of things. It's just dependent on what the family member may be experiencing and what facility.
And thank you, Cheryl. And thank you for the work you do, because it feels like, again, going back to you can't teach somebody how to care. The fact that you're being that attentive to the folks living in these long-term care facilities means you really have to care about the people that you're serving. And so we before we hit record today, I asked you how your day was, and I said, was it a busy day? And you said, yeah, it was busy. And so I'm imagining, do you guys get a lot of phone calls then, or are these
We do.
rare?
We get phone calls, and we have, well, you don't know, but we get phone calls not only in reference to problems in facilities, we get calls from people who are in the community who don't know how to start the process of getting someone into a long-term care facility. So we answer those type of questions. Or if someone wants to transfer their loved one from one facility to the next facility, we get questions about that as well. We even get questions from people who may have a neighbor that's been wandering, doesn't have any children. You're concerned because it's a safety hazard, something's going on with the lights in their home. Sometimes they're on, sometimes they're not, and they're forgetful, and they don't have loved ones. So we then give them the contact information to the appropriate authorities because we don't have jurisdiction in the community. So we are a resource for them as well. So any way that we can help, our main focus is long-term care and assisted living. But we get different phone calls for different reasons. And if we can be a resource, then we are a resource to them. We point them in the right direction.
I've heard that repeatedly about
Mhm.
CAAC. Like if we don't have the resource, we're going to show you and tell you how to get in touch. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I've heard that repeatedly. One more
Mhm.
question about the ombudsman. How does one, and I was like, oh, you're doing social work. I like that. But how does one become an ombudsman? Like, what is it just, I applied for the job and now I'm one? Or I heard you say, is there a
No,
certification
yes,
or?
ma'am.
Mm.
We had to study a manual. I'm looking at it right now. It's about this thick. And then we go downtown for 3 days, 3 to 4 days, and the state ombudsman has to certify us. We have to take a test. And then we have to do CEUs to try to keep your certification up. So all of that falls in line, but you are tested for it. And we are looking for volunteer ombudsman representatives. And they go in, and it could be someone that's going in, depending on what they want to do when they go in the facility. If they want to do the same thing that we do when we go in, because HIPAA, you have to be careful with that, then they'll have to become certified. But sometimes you can be an advocate for people without having to go that far. You can just take information and pass it along to myself or Mary Ann, and then we'll take it from there. So we are looking for volunteer ombudsman, but you do have to be certified in order to do the work that Mary Ann and I do, because sometimes we have to request records and things of that nature.
Mhm. I love this. And I didn't know that. And I'm just even imagining students, because we have a lot of students who listen to the podcast, students who just want more experience in the elderly and long term care
Mhm.
arena. This is an awesome opportunity to get certified in something that could potentially lead to a job, but also experience in working with this population. And the fact that you said we're so short staffed earlier in our conversation, I was thinking, man, what a time to be short staffed when the baby boomers are. Yeah, I see your face. Yeah, the two is a perfect storm, and so
Mhm.
it being a perfect storm for some things to pop off might be the perfect opportunity for volunteers who do care and need some stuff on their resume,
Absolutely.
students, to be able to come and volunteer with you guys and learn from experts such as yourself as well. I'm putting the call out, and I'm going to make sure we put your link to the CAAC. So if somebody's listening and like, I want to volunteer, there's no place to volunteer. Cheryl Craig just told us you can volunteer as an ombudsman as long as you get the certification. And it sounds like she'll help lead you in the direction
Of course.
to how you can do that. So that's exciting. I love that you said that what your love was advocacy, and that you've been advocating since you were, when your mama was still doing the long-term care. And so advocacy in long-term care can be complex especially when residents and families are navigating complicated systems. I was thinking about, and I told you, even having a degree and having worked in the medical system myself, it is very complex to navigate. So, what does advocacy on the ground look like for you in your day-to-day work?
Advocating for these residents on a day-to-day is it comes very, very naturally to me because I've been doing it for so long. But it can be something as simple as I was out shopping Saturday and I was admiring a dress, and there was a lady in the store and she came over. She was admiring the dress as well. When I tell you, she began to tell me her whole life story, and it led into her being a caregiver for her nephew who is now in a long-term care facility. And she did not know about him having an ombudsman representative. Everybody can use an advocate. And it's just listening to people, hearing them, because sometimes you can listen to a person and not hear what they're saying to you. And as an advocate, it's my job when I go to the resident council meetings, don't just ask them these questions without listening to their reply. What is it that's concerning them? And make sure that you're taking notes, because what you're supposed to do is whatever department they have an issue in collectively as a group, then you have to go and have a conversation with them. They have to come up with a resolution and you have to give them feedback. But in order to be able to do that, you have to listen at what they're saying. And so advocating is just, like I said, something as simple as in servicing them on the fact that, okay, I understand this is a tough job. I understand that people ringing the call, like for whatever reason, but you have to put yourself in someone else's shoes, because it's all the facilities. And this is what I tell the young CNAs that I in service to, nurses as well. There are facilities that I go to, and there are people that's your age that have no control over being there. So make sure you're working and being the kind of person that you want to take care of you if you were in their shoes. We have to be mindful of that. A lot of people, it's the truth, it's people young that are in these facilities that are not living the life that they were used to for whatever reason, and they're dependent on somebody that's their age or younger than them to provide care to them. So when you advocate for people like that, you got to make sure that the people that you're in servicing understand who they're taking care of and know who you're taking care of. Read your care plan. It tells you how to take care of them. It's simple. If they would do that, it would make their job so much easier. And for a person to be able to see one person come through the door that they can depend on, it means everything in the world to them. It makes all the difference in the world to them. So that's what it is for me. When I go to it's so easy when I go in my facility, because I go with this. I let my heart lead me when I go in there. I'm going to listen. I don't care how long it takes. I'm here. I got 8 hours in a day, but I'm going to listen. So that's what it is for me.
And again, leading from your heart, it
Yes.
doesn't wear on your physical energy, because it's an open. I'm wondering, I was thinking it's overflowing, but in order for your heart to be overflowing in that way, Cheryl, what are some of the things you do to pour back into yourself? Yeah.
Right. Well, I've learned, and I've just learned this recently, that I have to advocate for myself. I have to take time for me. So if it means getting my nails done, getting my feet done, getting my hair retwist, or sometimes just driving and sitting in a parking lot, just looking out and being grateful for another beautiful day. The weather's changing, it's not as hot. It's little things like that. And also spending time with my grandchildren. I sat on the porch in a rocking chair and watched my two granddaughters just talk and ask questions. And it really made me feel good. It was a good feeling. And I'm just not getting to that point. They really brighten my day. They really do. So it's the little things. I'm a simple person. It doesn't take much. I don't go on trips. I don't, but it's the little things. Having a conversation and a cup of coffee with my mother. That's the energy that I need to get up and go out and do it again. And I'm also a caregiver part-time in the evenings. That's rewarding as well. If I can go in and somebody's had a bad day and I'm that person that can change that, to me, that's rewarding. That's how I pour back into me, because at the end of my shift, if you're sleeping and you're comfortable in my presence, I'm all right with it.
And you know what? I was just thinking your granddaughters are comfortable in your presence because they're just having and when we're thinking about just little girls feeling safe and
Yeah.
you get into witness little girls feeling safe,
Mhm.
especially little brown girls
Yes,
feeling safe. What a blessing.
it is.
What a
It is.
blessing. Yes. And for you to slow down enough to recognize that and
Mhm.
allow that just that picturesque moment to pour into you, to let that fill your cup. That is so beautiful. I want to go back to your shopping trip on Saturday and how
Mhm.
this lady just was admiring a dress as well. And then you got her whole entire story.
I
I was
did.
like, somebody I just did a interview earlier today, and she was like, we have social worker written on our forehead and people in the grocery store.
Right. And it's
Come and
it's
tell
like
us
that.
there's and in that though, it always is a reason. I love that you finished it up with, and turns out her nephew is in a long-term care facility and she didn't know that he had access to a long-term care ombudsman representative. It's always a point of why you're there in that moment. And when you were talking about the CNAs and telling them there's patients in other facilities at their age, I've been really just sitting with this concept of what if you're someone's answered prayer? So if I'm someone's answered prayer and I'm that CNA who's caring for that person,
Mhm.
and I'm doing a good job. I'm, caring for them and loving on them and singing or whatever it is that good job looks like for them. I'm that person's, or even that person's mama or grandmama's answered prayer, because then I know I also have my own prayers that I'm, waiting to get answered. And I want my prayers to come in that same high frequency energy that I'm pouring into someone else as being their answered prayer.
That's true. That's
Mm-hmm.
oh God, yes. That's
I
true.
want to be an answered prayer. I want to
Exactly.
be somebody's answered prayer, and if I'm that person's answered prayer, my answered prayers are going to come in a package that looks like me.
Don't they? It all that's the way it
Yes.
happens. It just
Mhm.
I agree.
Yeah, that's beautiful. All right. I'll move on
Okay.
to our next question. In this kind of work, there are often moments that remind you why you do what you do, even when it's hard. And I guess we just kind of did that with your granddaughters and with
Mhm.
the so we'll if you have any more stories that reaffirm your commitment, you can go there, or we can just go ahead and lean into the Remember Me documentary that we're showing on November 1st at CAAC, where it's a documentary and a community gathering, and it's going to be such a powerful tool for awareness and education. What are your hopes for those attending the screening, especially any caregivers or advocates who are working with people in long-term care facilities?
that they will gain a greater understanding of why it is important to advocate for those people and or anybody that needs advocating. You can advocate for people at the doctor's office. Anybody that needs somebody to be a voice for them, if you get educated and you become stronger in your knowledge of what you're advocating for, then that makes you stronger in being able to speak up. A lot of people, you know how the teachers always say, don't be afraid to ask questions because someone else in the class may have the same question, but they're not brave enough to ask. Then you can be that one person. It's other people that may not be brave enough to speak up. But if one person speaks up, then it's like a domino effect. It'll make other people feel comfortable in speaking up. But you have to have a full understanding, especially when you're dealing with your loved ones. You got to understand and see it from their point of view. And then that helps you to not become so frustrated. You know what I mean? You just, okay, I understand. And it makes life much easier. It makes taking care of a loved one much easier. Advocating becomes easier. People don't realize it. They may be advocating every day and just don't realize it.
We're advocating on this podcast. We're just
Right.
saying be an advocate and also be an advocate for yourself and make sure you
Absolutely.
pour back into yourself. But what I heard you say is be someone's answered prayer, even if it's being brave enough to ask a question that someone else we don't know who may else need to hear the answer to. You
Right.
are actually again someone's answered prayer. So
Right.
being somebody's answered prayer by speaking up and advocating is
Right.
key. Cheryl, I have so enjoyed this interview. I've been smiling the whole time. I learned a lot. But we are coming to our final question. And, we talked about the Remember Me documentary and how it is about honoring stories and voices that
Mhm.
deserve to be remembered. If you could leave one message with our audience today that you would want them to carry with them about the people that you serve, what would that message be?
Always remember that the people who are in the long-term care and assisted living facilities, they were younger at one time. They have paid their debt to society. They paid their dues. So when we're caring for them, when we're advocating for them, just be mindful and approach every situation dealing with it because they're delicate. Approach it with empathy and also compassion and make sure you listen to what they're saying. Even if it doesn't make sense, just listen to them. That's it.
Slow down and listen.
That's
Slow
it.
down and listen.
That's it. That's
Mm-hmm.
it.
So beautiful. So
Mhm.
beautiful. Cheryl, thank you so much for sharing your story and for your decades of dedication to protecting the dignity and rights of residents in long term care. Your work is a reminder that advocacy is love in action.
It is. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
for having me. I
You are
really
so
enjoyed it.
welcome. Yes. And to our listeners, we hope you'll join us on November 1st for the Remember Me documentary screening and community gathering hosted by the Central Alabama Aging Consortium here in Montgomery, Alabama. It will be a powerful opportunity to honor stories, uplift caregivers, and connect with resources that support aging with dignity. For more information about Cheryl and CAAC and the event, the Remember Me Project, or how to get involved, check out the links in the show notes. And as always, remember you are the work and the work is you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. We are glad you were here. If you like this episode, please come back to hear more stories of the journeys through social work and please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. See you next time here on the Goddesses of Social Work podcast.